Hello and welcome to the Real Life Podcast episode number 40. This week, despite still being on opposite ends of the country, I was joined once again by my sister and we sat down to discuss who we think are some of the most underrated filmmakers working today. We both came at this from slightly different angles, so lots is discussed in terms of cinematic form and individuals that you maybe wouldn't expect to hear. And we nearly ended on a wonderful moment of unity, but of course, being siblings, we had to push it that little bit further and have just a slight tinges of an argument. So I hope you've got time to sit back and relax and enjoy us discussing all things underrated directors. Hi, Verity.
Hi, Dom.
Hi. It's nice to have you back, even though you've
Thanks.
barely
It's
been
been
away at
such a
all.
long time.
I
Yeah.
know. Look, some directors get all the hype. And today
Oh,
I
we're
wanted
going
to talk
straight in. Okay,
about,
cool.
yeah,
Cool.
I wanted to talk about the
Lovely.
people that didn't, you know? Brief
That's
us on
absolutely
your
fine.
thinking, because I know that you've taken a slightly different approach to this because I didn't give you loads of warning again.
No, that's good. Well, I basically, so you said underrated directors.
I
I
did.
don't know how, like, I have, I don't know how many of the directors that I esteem for their directing are particularly underrated. Not because I don't think that underrated directors are good, but because I was just trying to think about the movies that I liked first,
Hmm.
and then I thought, okay, who directed those movies? And most of the time that did happen to be people who were kind of like in a fairly obvious position. So there might be some like obviously really mainstream ones for me. But I just feel like underrated directors is one that I'm not too clued in on. So
Hmm.
I've gone with the project first and then the person, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
interesting. And how many do you have in
Yeah.
total?
I've got some like honorable mentions.
Do you want to list off your honorable mentions first then? Because
Okay.
I've got four directors that I've got like a bit of focus on.
Okay, I would say that I have five.
Okay, well let's honorable mention them.
Okay, so uh Paul Feig.
Hmm.
I think
Very
I've
funny.
never I've never disliked anything that Paul
Hmm.
Feig's done.
Hmm.
And I think that it's a really fine line for a director to give their actors creative like freedom. And I think he's worked with a lot of people who, let's just be honest, like absolutely piss off the script. Like so many actors and who just really just have fun with it. And I think it's a really impressive thing to like let go so much that you can take that on. So
As
Paul
Melissa
Feig.
McCarthy once said, I wish you had a shittier delivery, Paul.
I obviously think Yorgos Lanthimos is one of my favorite. High key in the spotlight.
High key rated, you know.
High key. Apart from the maybe the last 10 minutes of Begonia that I saw recently, but apart
Well,
from
don't
that,
spoil that for me
I
because I haven't seen it yet. But
and then obviously, I mean, it
very
goes
briefly,
without.
very briefly, what's your favorite
Yeah,
Lanthimos film?
I think it is the favorite. I think it is. I thought about the lobster, but I think
Yeah,
it's the
I
favorite.
think it's either The Lobster or The Favorite for me. I did like Poor Things a lot, but
I think the favorite just has like I don't know what it was. I think it struck something in me a little bit more. I think it
hmm.
was just more, I think it was more exciting. I think it was more engaging the whole way through. Maybe that's just me, but I also thought that it had a lovely equal level of um absurdity and heart, and I
Yeah,
liked that.
sure. Okay, so who else then?
And then obviously, I mean, my favorite director is Greta Gerwig, but she's enormous.
Again, high
So
key rated. Yeah.
again, high key rated. Big, 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 big. So I would say that those people, if you were asking me about like my favorite directors, those would be some of the people that I would mention if I weren't going with this kind of slightly more under the radar
Okay.
approach.
All right. So
Yes.
I don't have any honorable mentions, but what I do want to say
Hmm.
about mine are that actually they don't all have particularly large filmographies. They're not working on sort of the 10 to
Mm.
12 range of a Nolan or a Tarantino, or even the sort of,
Yeah.
30 range of a Scorsese, or a
Hmm.
50 million range of a Herzog, or whatever it is.
Mm.
Um, Most of them have maybe two or three solid features, and that's kind of
Hmm.
it. But that's
Okay.
kind of why I think they are underrated. I
Cool.
have been on at least, I'm going to go with two occasions here, quite a film wanker. So let's let's just brace ourselves for that,
I
you know?
did know that was coming.
Yeah. And I'm going to start off with. I'm not really ranked these, but I do want to end with my most underrated one. So I'm going to start
Hmm.
with one of the other people. So, but the rest of them aren't in any particular order. But I'm going to
Hmm.
start off with the work of Apichatpong Weerasethakul. More on that later. No,
Hmm.
yes, he's a Thai director, um, and he has only done sort of, I think, three or four features. But the most recent one was a film called Memoria, which had Tilda Swinton in it, which was
Oh, I
very
heard that
good.
was great.
It was brilliant.
Mm.
But what I like most about what he does is this blurring of reality and memory. He's a very, very slow-paced director. There's a film that he did, which I'm going to focus on. For each of mine, I've got like one film I want to focus on, which kind of highlights why I think they're underrated. He did a film called Cemetery of Splendor, which
Hmm.
was pushing 3 hours, kind of slightly surrealist piece about like a hospital in Thailand, in which people's memories and perceptions of things started to kind of blur with the reality around them. Um, they're kind of meditative films. Part of the reason why they're slow paced is because they almost have like a calming quality, even though what they're
Hmm.
discussing and what they show sometimes isn't very calming. The kind of pacing of it makes you feel like you're in a dream, like you're going along with it, like it's sort of meditating you. You sort of almost like melting into the scenery yourself. It uses, so this film, Cemetery of Splendor, uses illness and sleep as sort of metaphors. It's about finding beauty in the mundane. It's about the subtlety of the ever presence of politics, even in stuff like sleep or illness or memory, whatever that kind of thing is. And what I love about it is that it has this kind of it's an incredibly spiritual film, but it doesn't ever, there's surrealist kind of work that you can watch and just go like, right, okay, I really got to get on board with the fact that this is just nonsense. Like Daisy is a really important film and it has a lot of important content in it,
I don't know
but
daisies.
it's a surrealist film from the 60s. I think it's Czech.
Okay. Right.
Very, very famous historical piece of feminist cinema.
Hmm.
And all of its messaging is very important and stuff, but you do have to do that thing of like, right, I'm watching something that's meant to be a bit weird and it's a bit random and not actually very well made, and you kind of have
Right.
to go with it. Whereas this is really well made. Yes, it's
Mm.
slow and it's a bit kind of like mind fucky, but it's so grounded in all of its kind of textures. It's got ambient sound which is always embedded into the place. Like there's not a lot of music going on in it. There's more kind of diegetic than anything else. You've got natural
Okay.
lighting for loads of it until there isn't, and suddenly it's really harsh and really interesting and intriguing. And I love those contrasts in it. It's sort of like if cinema was a lullaby, then We're a
Hmm.
Setical would be the one singing it. And that's the way that I kind of see all of the way that he works. And that's why I think a film with Tilda Swinton, who's this really kind of strong, subtle actress who does a lot of like the minimalism really well. I think that was the perfect marriage when they come to do Memoria. I just think more it's a cinema you need patience for, but I think more films should be made with that patience in mind. I don't think we should always have to cater to because it's not like a big epic where it's 3 hours long. It's not like Killers of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer where it's 3 hours and you're supposed to be like, look at all the things. It's just
Hmm.
this kind of really slow, subtle, yeah, like dreamlike piece of cinema with political subtext about, it's got like things are asleep with soldiers or just people who are ill or Thailand's own political stagnation, collective amnesia when military rule is enforced. All that sort of stuff is done just through these really kind of diegetic, like normal, subtle images. And I just love that he's able to do that and be patient with it. So there we go.
Okay. That sounds nice. I mean, to be fair, I've never seen anything that he's
No,
done.
that's a
Um,
rogue one. I didn't expect you to sort of have gone, oh yeah, I've seen Cemetery of Splendor.
I have to admit, like, I think most of the people that you mention, I won't have seen, and all
You
of the people that
will have
I
heard
mention,
of some of
you
them.
will have.
Well, we
Okay.
don't know. We don't know. But I will say that part of the reason why I know this guy is because I was in a film class at uni, which one of his films came up.
I
So,
have to admit, I think you're going to have some more film wanker theories than me.
well, that is who I am, Verity. So that's
It
all okay.
is your personality, so
I'm
that's
afraid
fair
so.
enough.
Tell me yours.
Okay, I think one of the best directorial examples that I've ever seen of something of me being able to see the direction and the imagination and that input
Hmm.
visually on the screen, really obviously all the time and loving every second of it, is the Chicago movie musical. I think that's one of the best examples of movie directing
Hmm.
I have seen.
Hmm.
And that is Rob Marshall. And obviously, Rob Marshall is a fucking massive name of directing, but actually, he might not be the first person that you think of when you
Sure.
think movie director.
Yeah.
Like, also because he's done quite a lot of a lot of the work that he does for movies is like original theatre based movies. So for
Hmm.
example, he's done like Mary Poppins Returns, Chicago, that kind of thing. And I think that it's the inventiveness for me that's really interesting. So it's like changing from one thing to another. So I know that partly the script and the style of the films that he's doing lend themselves to that, but I think that he strikes a really lovely balance between kind of meta, knowing that you're watching a film, like
Hmm.
knowing that you're watching something that's kind of staged. It's a bit of a production, but also being able to invest in that and imagine yourself in that. So it's the kind of mix of stage and naturalism for me within the stuff that he does. And I
Yeah.
think Chicago is a really good example of that. So there are moments, obviously, where perhaps it's more of a musical number and it's as if the whole thing is on stage. You're watching a kind of like immersive movie version of the stage show. And then as soon as we're back into the dialogue, or as soon as we take a break from that music or there's speech for a second, we're back into this like really naturalistic, over the shoulder kind of shots, movie, two people talking to each other. I think that the way that it's done is really beautiful, but at no point is it jarring. It's so beautifully blended. That's why I like him. And I think he does the same in Mary Poppins Returns. He manages to do
Hmm.
this kind of like, oh, magical stage, very camp thing. And then at the same time, when we're out of those moments, when we're out of the moment of magic or out of the moment of song, again, we feel the heart and the connection between two characters in the same way that we might do in a non-musical movie. And
Hmm.
so I think for me, Rob Marshall, to be fair, he's probably not the, well, actually, this is really embarrassing. He's probably not the biggest name that I'll mention today, but like, I think that Rob Marshall does that fantastically. And I think
Hmm.
that's why the direction impresses me because that's not an easy thing to do. And you can see it visually the whole way through. Sometimes direction is much more subtle and you think it's the writing, you think it's the acting, and actually the direction is underlying that. But in
Hmm.
this, it's so clearly the direction throughout. That's why I think it's impressive.
That's good. I like also think that Mary Poppins Returns could easily have won an Oscar for like best editing or something. I'm almost certain that
Mm,
it was the year in which Bohemian Rhapsody fucking won it.
right.
When you go, I mean, I'm sorry, did you watch the
Yeah,
film? But
sure.
Mary Poppins Returns is a really kind of slick, nicely made, uh, uh, like really successfully inoffensive
Yeah. Oh,
ode
agree.
to the original in so many ways. I think Rob Marshall did a really good job with that. I mean, I agree with everything you said, particularly about Chicago and stuff like Mary Poppins. I
Mm,
would, I don't know how fair it is to judge him on because I think he did Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides,
yeah.
which is really when the series starts to sort of fall apart. And
And also, there is an element to Strange Tides where it is that kind of very theatrical way of like, do you know what I mean? There's real theatre to Pirates of the Caribbean.
yeah, I think that comes from as Mark Kermode says, Johnny Depp doing an impression of David Bowie doing an impression of Anthony Newley. Oh,
But
but
even in the way
yeah,
that
it
it's
is quite
shot,
large. It's
like,
quite sort of
yeah,
it is
it's quite
almost
camp.
stagey. It is camp. It's
Yeah,
almost stagey, and
yeah.
that's sort of the difference, I think. I mean, that's a separate podcast for talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, but yeah, no, you're
Mm,
right, and he is very, very good at that stuff and very well, can judge it very well. Well, that's a cool choice. I like that one.
thank you.
And I think it probably does come under sort of the underrated section because there's,
Okay.
a great, great legacy of musical films, if nothing else.
Yes.
I know for a fact that you do know the next one that I'm talking about.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to focus on two films here because I think they're both great. He's
Mm,
only really got three that people know about, and one of them was a
mm,
complete disaster.
hmm.
But it's Thomas Alfredson, who was the director of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy,
Ah,
as well as Let the Right One In and The Snowman. Let's not talk about The Snowman because it's awful, and he knows it's awful, and he knows that it's not his fault that it was awful and that
the
things went wrong
snowman.
around him. Yeah, but
You
like
mean
it
like
was
the animated?
no, I mean the action film. The Snowman.
Oh, I thought because I was like, what do you mean? That's the most
No,
brilliant film
Verity.
that exists out
No,
there.
Verity. He didn't commission Alan Jones to do a song.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so I think he's one of the most precise directors around, and I'm confused as to why he hasn't been sought after more. Um, he's incredibly character focused storytelling. All the minor characters, even if they're in it for a very short time, are fully realized. Circa Kathy Burke in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. This really kind of rounded character. She's not a caricature. She is a full, and she's only in it for what, 20 minutes? I mean, she's not in it
Mm.
for long. I love this moral ambiguity that is in every single frame of an Alfredson film. And then when he's working on Tinker Tailor with Hoyte van Hoyt, the cinematographer that Chris Nolan uses, you can literally smell the sort of the tobacco in the walls of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Like you can it's so grainy and beautifully framed and pictured that like it does that thing, in like tense spy movies when everyone's kind of just looking at each other like this. Like in a Ken Branagh film when everyone's just looking at each other like this and you don't know who's looking at who suspiciously and who's suspicious and who isn't. It does that without making it acted by Ken Branagh. It's like it's so kind of like naturalistic and like framely reinforced in the way that it does it. Like the way that everyone looks at each other is like actually constructed within the frame to make sense. And there's just tiny little details. The great best example of direction that I always come back to is in The Social Network, and it's none of the big freak out scenes or anything like that. But Jack Howard's talking about this as well, and it's this idea that when I think they've just made Face Mash, and Mark and Eduardo come back into the dorm room, and without thinking, Mark goes over to the fridge and gets out a beer for himself and goes and sits down. Eduardo doesn't see that, walks in and gets two beers out and sees that Mark's got one and goes, oh, right, and just puts the other one back in the fridge, right? That's never discussed. No one mentions that. He doesn't go, do you want a bit? Oh, right, never. He just goes, oh, and then puts the beer back in the way. And all that tells you, in a heartbeat, Eduardo is out for both of us and Mark is out for his ones. That's perfect direction because that's not in the script. That's just a thing that David Fincher would have chucked in there. The same is true of Thomas Alfredson. Largely, if something's in a David Fincher film, it's in there because it's on purpose and he wanted it to be, right? He's
Sure.
very, very stupidly meticulous, doing 99 takes or whatever of everything. With
Mm.
Alfredson, the image I have in my head is that horrible, like utterable betrayal of Colin Firth putting his shoes back on when Gary Oldman walks back into the house. And what you realize from that image alone of Colin Firth putting his shoes back on is that he has just slept with Gary Oldman's wife. And you know that that's what happened from that very thing. And then suddenly you go, oh my God, it's him. And you know that he's the line. You know you can't trust him. And I love that because it's not this big moment where the music goes, brrr. You just see him putting his shoes subtly on under the table, moving his legs like nothing's happening. And then you know everything from there. It's these visual clues as well, because in that film, it's constantly flicking from 20 years ago or however long ago, previously and now, basically, is what it keeps flicking between. And the best distinction that that film does is the only way to tell that is not because a reading pops up on the screen. It's not because it uses a different color palette or anything like that. It's literally Gary Oldman has a different pair of glasses in the future and in the past. And that's such a succinct way of showing everything that's happening with this pair, future, everything that's happening this pair, past. And that's such a really like concise way of doing it, and I love that. And then I mean, there's other ways of doing that. Like Greta Gerwig using a different color palette is clever in Little Women and all that sort of stuff. But like, I love how small that detail is and just how it gives you everything because it means that you can then focus on like one of the best casts you've ever seen. But I kind of think that it's perfect. Like if I was wanting to someone to show like what's an example of perfect filmmaking? I'd be like, well, it's probably Tinker Tailor because like I can't think of a single spy film I think is better than that because it's so it's not about
You
spies. It
clearly
is
haven't seen The Spy Who Dumped Me with Mila Kunis and Kate
yes,
McKinnon.
yes, I have. um, it's not about spies. It is
Mm,
about I've told you this before, but it's about a crisis in maleness. It's about
mm.
you know, old men suddenly realizing that they are old men and that they are completely expendable and that they don't have the security or the safety that they thought they did, and just how male that unraveling is, and all that sort of stuff. And I absolutely just because you're like, you just like, who do we put in it? You go, right, okay, let's have Gary Oldman, let's have Toby Jones, let's have Colin Firth, let's have Benedict Cumberbatch, let's have Tom Hardy, let's have Mark Strong, let's have you, literally everyone, and just go, right, yeah, they're all brilliant. Let's have Kieran Hines, let's all do all this sort of stuff. But yeah, Let the Right One In is completely different in topic to Tinker Tailor. There's no reason why you'd go, the guy that directed the right one, Let the Right One In, can then do a John le Carre film because it's like it is a vampire coming of age film. Let the Right One In is essentially what it is. But it's incredibly tender. It blends horror and Scandinavian melancholy realism. Ooh, there's a bridge, stuff. But it's such a visual language because there's like again, it's the stillness. It's like this. It's almost icy. It's muted. It's emotionally isolated but emotionally ambiguous. Again, there's a bond between characters called Oscar and Eli, which is sweet but incredibly unsettling. What does innocence mean when violence is at the crux of having to survive? Can you remain innocent in that environment? There's questions about dependency, manipulation, and love. Is Eli protecting Oscar? Is he grooming him? We don't know. And it's that rare balance of horror and tenderness and, tragedy, which it allows the sort of the violent moments, because it is a vampire film, to kind of puncture it rather than dominate it. It's not like you go, "Oh, that was a terrifying film." It's like those moments stand out because it's kind of like this dagger to the bubble of emotion that's going on around it. And I really like that. It's sort of like it's a poetic horror. And again, it's completely different topic wise from Tinker Tailor, but there's a consistency of voice across Alfredson's work, which is there are questions to be asked. The real world, if you leave it alone, is often still. So let's put our characters in there. It's essentially going like, I can control the environment. What I can't control is the people. And I love that so much because there's such structure to all of these environments. It's muted and Let the Right One In. It's kind of office-like and official in Tinker Tailor. But what it then does is go, and I'm going to bleed the characters into that. I'm not going to have loads of wild stuff going on. I'm not going to have loads of big events causing these things. It's like these humans are in relatively subdued environments, and yet they still shoot emotionally all over the place. And I absolutely love watching that play out in this kind of poetic, very, very cinematic way. So again, slightly wanky, but there we are.
Yeah, but that's
That's life. It's also me. So give me another.
Stephen Daldry.
Right.
Because I feel like, but I don't know about other people, but I feel like I know Stephen Daldry for a lot of theatre work.
Yeah.
Stephen Daldry has like an incredible West End and Broadway resume. But of films that Stephen Daldry has done, I can only name one or two.
Um,
But I know
he
that there's a
did
vast amount.
he did The Hours with Meryl Streep and Alison Janney.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Um,
So the
is The
ones that
Reader
I'm
him as well?
so the ones that I'm basing this off are Billy Elliot,
Hmm.
the film, because I think
Yeah.
that that's a beautiful example of like filmmaking and heart. The Reader, The Crown is his, and I know that that's not a movie, but that is filmmaking. That is. And so that's what I'm kind of going off. And I think that I see a kind of theme in a lot of the work that he does, which I think is really clever, in that there's this moral quandary of character quite frequently, and I think that he plays that really well. So what I find that Stephen Dodry is really good at is making us empathize and feel for a character before the facts hit us, or before we have to question who they are. So, for example, like let's take the reader. He creates an environment, he creates a world where you fall in love with Kate Winslet's character. Okay, so there's this from everything around it, from the music, from the light that he puts them in. There's a really warm light for the first part of that movie before we know who this person is, or what their past is. There's a really nice warm light. You find that other people are a bit rude to her, for example. So like when they're in the cafe, the kind of waiter coming up and like pressing them a bit, things like that. I think that he's very good at creating like a situation for us to feel for that character, and then it's turned on its head and we realize what she's done, and so that when we find out that information, that like really crucial information, actually we already feel for her so much that we kind of like don't blame her. Like, I don't know about you, but I came out of the reader going like, oh, but she shouldn't, that shouldn't be the case, because like she didn't really know what she was doing, and like I was making excuses for the actions of another person. And I find like almost a similar thing in Billy Elliot. Like, you're given this like family and you're made to feel for them. You're shown the political environment, you're shown the political landscape really obviously. And so I find that what motivates Stephen Daldry a lot, to motivate his audience, is how to empathize. And like he creates an environment really well with empathizing with the characters that he wants you to care about, and he
Yeah.
does that so well. And you take like the crown, like actually the royal family are a really divisive peoples. Like, there's a lot of very like anti-monarchists at the moment. The royal family aren't exactly like massively in favor all the time, but
Oh
let's be
no, you
honest.
idiot! Bloody Mrs. Windsor! Oh no, bloody Mrs. Windsor!
Like, but you know what? It'd be like, oh, look at that. We all watched The Crown and were like, oh my gosh, these incredible people. No, as in the Queen is the central character.
Yeah.
You watch that and you go, oh my God, what, like this person who you like feel so heartily for and all this. But it's because I found that he creates that the environment for us to feel like that really well.
Yes, I agree. I will 100% back you up in the empathy. Because the thing about The Crown, right, is that they spend something like 1 million an episode
Yeah,
on
it's insane.
making sure that everything's sort of physically accurate in
Hmm.
the sense that there's so
Hmm.
no one that could go, oh, that's the wrong quill or that's the wrong piece, all that sort of stuff. All the
Mm.
character stuff is then, as it were, constructed on top of that. It's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Fictionalized. Um,
Mm.
I mean, to a point, I mean, it's all sort of roughly around the topics that they were talking about, but all the conversations obviously are not conversations that were actually had. And the
Mm.
conversations are some of the best bits of The Crown. The best bit of
Mm.
direction I can think of from The Crown is a scene that I haven't actually heard a lot of people talk about, but I absolutely love. And it's when, and this is where The Crown really came to suffer in
Mm.
seasons 5 and 6, which I just didn't think were good
Mhm.
enough at all, is the scene where Philip and Elizabeth are discussing divorce when they're on the ship.
Mm. Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
ends with Philip getting a little bit angry and saying, no, I need something which commands the respect of the people who keep telling me what to do when I'm at my own home in the palace, right?
Mm.
And that entire scene is really slow. There's not a lot of lines actually when
Mm.
that's script, but the way that Claire Foy and Matt Smith are doing it, the way that it's directed, all of the little elements of sound design and stuff. Like the sound design is so great for that scene. There's this ticking
Mm.
clock that's going in the room, and all you hear, you see the creaking sounds of the boat as they're on the water and some of the sounds of the sea outside. And it's kind of like time is passing between these two, but no real thing is occurring between them. Like you've got like the ticking of a clock and some creaky
Mm.
floorboards, but they're on the waves. And it's an obvious metaphor, but like I like it. But it's a 5 minute scene in which their dynamic is so beautifully captured, and a lot of that does come from the directing. Obviously, a lot of that does come from performance as well.
Mm.
But I love that stuff. I will say in Billy Elliot, the best stuff is obviously the close-ups from character to character and not the
So,
stuff around it. That's a good shout again. I wouldn't have thought of it. But now that you talk
cheers.
about it, yeah, it's a good idea. I hope that you know who my next one is. Because this is
Okay.
without a doubt the biggest name I've got on this list.
Hmm.
Um, Director of films like Morven Caller, recently, as in like last week recently, Die My Love, You
Oh
Were
yeah,
Never Really Here, and We Need to Talk About Kevin. It's Lynn Ramsey.
I love We
Um,
Need to Talk About Kevin.
I want to focus on that and then a bit on You Were Never Really Here as well. Because
Hmm.
I think You Were Never Really Here is probably her best film. But I think We Need
Hmm.
to Talk About Kevin does a lot of stuff which sort of encapsulates the way she works. I actually think Morven Caller's
Hmm.
pretty fucking good as well. I
Hmm.
haven't seen Die My Love yet. But so she she does minimal dialogue, Lynn Ramsey, which is a shame because I don't know if you've ever listened to her speak, but she's so brilliant. You
I
think,
haven't, no.
you've got lots of great things to say. What she's great at doing is like there'll be this really clever detail in the film that like where there, I don't know, some piece of music links beautifully to either what's happening on screen or the character's emotions or something. And I'd be like, what made you, what made you pick that piece of music? It's so inspired. It's such a great choice. And she'll be like, oh, does it really? Oh, I didn't know. I was just lucky, I guess. And it's just like downplays herself all the time. I'm like, no, Lynn, you're a genius. Shut up. I think the way she uses sound and rhythm is probably one of the one of the best things, one of the best tools that any film director has. She makes small personal stories feel like these giant, epic, and urgent things, where the mood and the atmosphere are absolutely central. She immerses you in absolutely everything that she's doing. You never really hear is the story of a father trying to find the daughter, and it's not. I have a very specific set of skills. It's like it's like actual kind
Stop
of
Kermit the Frog.
drowning fear. No, it's not. I will if you don't let the girl go. I will track you down.
So
I
can I
will
just
kill you.
say, what they've just heard you do is an
Yeah,
impression of
of an
um
impression of an impression.
you've an impression of Seth Meyers doing an impression of
Rogan.
Kermit the Frog, doing
No, Seth
sorry,
MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane doing an impression of Kermit the Frog, doing an
An
impression of
impression of Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson, who is doing lines from a film. So like I just wanted to take if anybody didn't know what you were doing, I just wanted to take them through the
It's
process of what the fuck that
impressionception
was.
right here. I'm going to do You Were Never Really Here first. Again, it's that minimalism, sort of stripping away any exposition whatsoever, letting image, sound, performance do all the communication that you need. It's sort of, I think Nolan does exposition really cleverly, but it is sort of the anti-Nolan in that it's just kind of like, don't need any of that. Get rid of all of it. Let's show it, not talk about it. You get Joaquin Phoenix doing, I think, his best performance. It's incredibly internal. Violence, it moves away from being spectacle in that film and starts to become actually an expression of psyche rather than any kind of like, and then he kills someone. It's kind of like, oh my God, that's coming from a certain place. You've got like really fragmented editing, these flashbacks. Johnny Greenwood's doing the score, and I love Johnny Greenwood so much. It's all impressionistic rather than kind of just a straightforward narrative experience. You've got cycles of abuse, you've got masculine fragility, you've got the way that violence sort of corrodes away at morals for a long time. It's all rendered with empathy rather than exploitation. It could so easily be exploitation cinema, what Lynn Ramsey talks about all the time, particularly with We Need to Talk About Kevin, which essentially is the story of why school shootings can sometimes happen, right? And yet, rather than like the entire film focus on the crux of when Kevin goes into the school with the crossbow, it's this in like haunting examination of a mother's empathy at the end of the day. I mean, that's what it's really all about. I mean, the moment where, and it is a bit of a spectacle, but the moment where she comes home and looks into the back garden, and John C. Riley and the sister are lying on the grass with bolts, the crossbow bolts in their chest, dead, is one of the most horrific things that I've ever seen. And it's not because it comes from a place of going, people died. It's because it's going from a place of like, that husband and that daughter that this woman absolutely needed, they're
Mm,
gone. And it's just like this really kind of, you can almost frame it as anti-thriller work. You Were Never Really Here is almost like a Hitman film where the emotional aftermath overshadows the action completely. And I love that and then it's sort of like flipped around so that the emotional stuff from the start before the action is the other way around, and We Need to Talk About Kevin, right? It's all the build up, and then it's like 10 minutes at the tops of the film, that last bit where he goes into the school. And it's so delicately handled, and she's got such a genius way of working that like I can't. I'm glad that she's got another film out, Damn I Love, and I really want to see it because I love her, and I think she'll do some incredible work with two great performers there. But it's such pure filmmaking in the sense that it's kind of like it's about the sound, it's about the rhythm of it, it's about the sequence of images. It's not about going, I've got a story here, and then people are going to sit and talk to us about the story. Just show us the story. It's brilliant. And actually, that's what I wanted to briefly talk about Billy Elliot, is that actually
mm,
for a lot of it, it's kind of like a neo-realist film. It's this kind of like get working class actors to come in, and yes, you've got a couple of big stars, but actually it's about this kind of community sense of it's essentially realist cinema for quite a lot of it. I mean, if you look outside of the ballet, but like even then, that's kind of that's part of it, you know, and it's just kind of a grounded, realist bit of filmmaking. It's the essence of realist filmmaking. And then this is kind of that, except using a Hollywood budget every now and again, and Hollywood stars. But no, I love it. Big fan.
Hmm. Yeah, of those ones, I think I only know Kevin in depth.
Right.
But I would like to see Die My Love because I
Hmm.
think the style of filmmaking of Kevin, that kind of show not tell thing, I want to watch more of.
Hmm. And it
So
works so well with
yeah.
when you talk about Kevin because Kevin
Hmm.
doesn't speak a lot. And when he
Hmm.
does, it's
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
kind of like it's either worrying or confusing or impactful. And so you
Hmm.
save those moments for when they really matter and you just show the rest of it. And that's exactly what Lynn Ramsey does almost better
Yeah.
than anyone else. So yeah,
Hmm. Okay. Good, 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 good. I didn't know very much, but
there
now
you
I
go.
do. That's nice.
So
You had four, and I think I have five, but I also think that like I've kind of cheated a little bit in that I've put two people into one
it's Phil
spot
Lord and
because
Chris Miller. That would be actually I should have
no,
put them in there. Fuck.
I've put two people into one spot because I like one thing that I've seen them do, but I haven't seen the other stuff yet.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, as you said, so you've got two that fit into that category.
I've got two people but in one space, and then
We'll
I've
do
got one
them.
more.
Do them then.
Do them? Okay,
Yeah.
so they're the two most obscure. There's two people that I like for two very different reasons, but they're doing two things that I hold in such high esteem.
Hmm.
So they are Amy Sherman Palladino, who wrote and directed the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel series,
Okay.
and also did Gilmore Girls, which is loved everywhere, but it's really fast paced. It's really fast paced. So the speech in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel not only is like slightly unnaturalistic in the way that the Social Network is, in that you have these kind of really quippy conversations, really fast back and forths, and the camera and the kind of ambience kind of reflect that. So you have you'll focus on one person and then the next, and it does kind of it really keeps pace, so you want
Hmm.
to keep that attention. But also, there's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of follow movement, which I love, in order for you to keep up. Because I find that like if you're watching dialogue and it's one, two, one, two, one, two, and you're changing each time, it's exhausting. It can
Hmm.
get boring, and actually it can get a bit sort of dizzying. But what I think that she does really well is that, for example, a lot of this happens in this household on the Upper West Side, with this like very sort of affluent Jewish family, and their house is has lots of sort of like open, not open space, but as in you can move from one room to another, and it's like sort of semi-open plan in that there's an archway or there's a, and so many of the conversations you'll watch move from one place and come into another so that there's action, but you're following that action. And so much, the speed at which the dialogue is said and the speed at which you learn information in that time means that it's not, you don't feel like you're out of the loop. You're like
Hmm.
concentrating and you're listening, but you don't feel out of the loop in any way. I think that the progression of character, and I can say this because she wrote it as well, is
Hmm.
unbelievable. Like, it's so firmly established, and you're so interested the whole way, partially because of how quick it is. I feel like as human beings, we love when somebody's able to like come up with a comeback or a one up or all this kind of stuff. And Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is like filled with that stuff. But it's done really cleverly in that you've got such faith in those characters. You've got such faith in those characters to be able to do that. But also, you don't always love the things that they say. Like sometimes you'll be like, oh, okay, well, didn't see that coming, but
Hmm.
I'm actually behind you. I changed my mind. I'm completely behind you. So I really
Hmm.
like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I really, from what I've seen of Amy Sherman Palladino, I really like that. And then the second person, this is my absolutely most obscure person, and this is somebody called Desiree Archhaven.
Desiree Uphaven. I have not seen any of these things.
Stunning. That is genuinely, I think I've won at life.
I've
Um,
not seen that.
but
I've heard of the miseducation of Cameron Post, but I've not watched
so
it.
that is what I'm using as my example here,
Okay.
the miseducation of Cameron Post, because you could watch that, and this is partially due to the performance and partially due to the way that it's directed, but you
Hmm.
could watch that and believe that you are watching a documentary of real people doing real things,
Hmm.
feeling real things. In the opposite way to Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is all, it's such a production.
Hmm.
Okay, everything's so forethought, so scripted, so everything. Whereas Miseducation Cameron Post is absolutely the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like if a room is a bit dark and dingy, what you see is dark and dingy. There's no lights, camera, action. There's no zhuzhing. A character is a little lost, a little like confused, a little not sure how to react to this. What you see is exactly what you get. Like there's nothing about that which is kind of like polished, and that is perfect for that film. It's
Mm.
perfect for that story. So I mean, I knew the book before I knew the film. The whole thing is it's a coming of age drama. It's about a conversion therapy camp, basically a Christian conversion therapy camp. And so actually, it's about something kind of dark. And there are absolutely dark moments. But I think that you are so allowed to make of it what you were. You're so allowed to see just like the raw feeling of that.
Mm.
And so I really like that. It's not over edited. It's not, there's no, what Greta Gerwig does in Little Women is there's that kind of the real like color grading of past versus present. There isn't that in the miseducation of Cameron Post. So actually, like anything that's happening in the past, there's a moment where you're like, oh my God, is this? Oh no, 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 no. Oh, okay. Oh my God, that's happening in the past. And so you are just as confused as these young teenagers who are trying to figure themselves out because you're like, how do you feel right now? How do you feel? Because I'm on that journey with you, and there's no telling me how I'm supposed to feel. There's
Mm.
simply just allowing me to watch what's happening, and
Yeah.
you feel like such a fly on the wall. I don't think that that's due to like a lack of production value. I think that's choices, and I think that that's if somebody asks me like, oh, what's a film where you don't like you feel like you're just watching humans? There are two, and one of them is Nomadland.
Hmm.
But that is because you are just watching humans. And then there's this one, but you are watching actors the whole time.
Yeah.
But you genuinely just feel like you're watching these poor kids like
Hmm.
figure out who they are in this
Hmm.
conversion therapy camp. And I think it's an like expert choices of fly on the wall directing. Yeah.
Cool. Well, they both sound like cool choices, and both names I didn't know. When I say she did the Sparks Brothers documentary, by the way,
Yeah.
for Amy, what was her name?
hmm Amy Sherman Palladino.
Sherman Palladino. She was one of the like talking heads that they kind of interview.
Oh, right.
It's Edgar Wright that directed it, but she was like one of the people that speak in it, so that was
Sure.
cool. But yeah, that's cool choices. Okay, well, we'll come on to. I mean, I didn't, as I said, I didn't have an order for these necessarily, but this is absolutely my
hmm
most underrated one, I think.
Okay.
Not because their work wasn't appreciated enough, even though I think it could have been appreciated more, but just because I think that like wanting, if I'd written something that I wanted someone to direct,
hmm
I would want this person to do it
Okay.
so fast. Um,
Is it Christopher Nolan?
yeah, no, I can't think of a single list of anything where the word underrated and Nolan would go together.
Mm.
The most rated director in the world at the minute.
There was
Um,
genuinely, there was one, I was talking to my housemate before I came in, and I was like, oh, it's about like underrated film directors.
mhm.
And then I was like, well, at least we're not going to talk about Nolan. That's the
No,
one time I can
we've
be
made an
so sure
excuse
you're
where that
not going to talk
I'm
about
not going to bring him
Nolan.
up. No, it's fine. Chris can step up. I think I'm one of the most
Mm.
rated directors of all time, I would
Yeah,
say.
I'd
Um,
argue at the top of the world at the moment.
the director of Capote, Moneyball, and one of my favorite ever films, Foxcatcher, Bennett Miller.
I haven't seen any of those, I'm
Now,
afraid.
you should watch Foxcatcher if you're going to pick any of these. It's the film, I don't know if you've seen any pictures. It's the film where Steve Carell wears a fake nose and is creepy. But it's also got a
Is that
very
not?
buff wrestling Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo in it.
And you've sold me.
There we go. I think I've sold everyone, haven't I? I want to focus on Foxcatcher. I will talk about
Mm,
Moneyball a bit. I like Capote, but it's not. my favorite. I mean, it's a great performance by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's just a genius. But
Mm,
Foxcatcher focuses on what becomes to be the US national Olympic wrestling team. Um,
mhm,
but essentially, it's bought out by a man called John DuPont, who is played by Steve Carell, who is this really kind of socially outcast, awkward, but very, very rich investor. And he comes to take control of the team, and with that comes control of Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo, who are brothers, both wrestlers. Now, it's such a. I feel like the reason why these people are all underrated is because they do the style of filmmaking that I like, which might not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, which is that quiet, human focused stuff. It's all about character over spectacle, but there are subtle bits of direction in this which are utterly genius. There are like bits of set decoration in which the camera moves in a slightly strange way, which doesn't ever throw you off, but you then come to notice to get those bits of decoration into a shot, right? So a shot will start like much wider than you expect, but it's only so that you can see stuff in the background for maybe a second, and then it's back in again. And it's like, again, no one talks about it, no one mentions it, but it just reinforces stuff. Like, you come to find out that the DuPont family, their riches come so heavily tied with military and armament that you really start to just question all of the morals of John DuPont on the spot. You don't know if he's just someone who was outcast on the playground at school and now he's turned into this figure, or if it's genuinely something evil within him, and it's this kind of it unfolds in this horrible way. There's a really horrible scene. You know when films when characters look at themselves in the mirror and they splash water on their face and they go and then they leave, right? Channing Tatum is an emotionally repressed man who's been told that the only way he can gain success from himself and his life is by wrestling other men and pinning them to the floor, and that's the only way he can ever let his emotions out. But there's a scene where he looks himself in the mirror, and instead of doing anything kind of like grr, oh dear, and smashing themselves in the face with water or whatever, or like squaring, whatever, he starts to punch himself in the face. He starts to like properly beat himself up as hard as he can. I mean, there's only so much your body will actually let you do when you hit yourself in the face, but he is going for it. He's really beating, and it's like, it's such a horrible kind of twisted thing to watch. But again, it's this kind of directing style that goes, I've got an environment here, but what anyone cares about is the characters. Like, and then he gets great people to play them. So in Moneyball, it's a leading pair of whatever you think of their private lives, which I happen to think negatively of, Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, right? And who are undeniably like magnetic on-screen presences. Brad Pitt plays the general manager of a baseball team, and Jonah Hill is essentially his kind of like his main advisor. Like he crunches the numbers. He takes this algorithmic approach to which players they should draft in so that they can get as many runs as possible and try and win the MLB, right? Um, and that's not that you pitch that and you go, a man gets an analyst in and then they end up winning the baseball. You go, that sounds fucking boring, right? A man buys the US wrestling team and it's all a bit weird. Boring. And then you watch them play and you go like, actually, sometimes the better, like when we're doing, fun fact, we've got a new podcast together. When we're doing for the plot,
mm,
what we're not going to do is what makes the best films, which is you pitch something boring, but
mm,
you make the characters as interesting as possible. And that I think is the recipe for total success. I think there's a real danger with a lot of films, particularly big blockbusters, where the plot completely outshines any of the characters, and that just makes the whole film feel completely absurd and negates the whole experience, right?
mm,
With Bennett Miller, he chooses his project so carefully that he went, right, what we have in John DuPont is one of the most complex, terrifying people of all time. And we have someone in the form of the Channing Tatum character who is like so tormented and mixed up that like even in the world of wrestling, which is just about how quickly can you pin someone to the floor and, win a wrestle.
keep them
It's
there.
this
Yeah.
yeah, it's this kind of like there's this back and forth between who to trust, whose rights to serve for. Can you legitimately represent something which you may not necessarily wholeheartedly agree with? And that's an allegory done for the Foxcatcher boxing wrestling team, which is where the whole thing takes place, hence the name, and the US as a whole. You start to go, right, well, actually, I can see John DuPont, who's the leader of this place, and he's a horrible human, and he's really weird. And there's a scene where John DuPont wants to wrestle himself. He loves wrestling so much he's going to get in the ring himself and do it. And he wins, and he's really excited, and he does it at the end. And then you see his assistant paying the guy that he's just fought against, as in like the guy just go like he didn't even try, and it was just to give him this feeling of like I can win, this satisfaction of like I'm in control. And you suddenly again, nobody goes, oh my god, did you pay him to win? It's just a scene literally quietly in the back, someone goes, have that, and just passes some money over, and they go, yep, and put it in the pocket and walk away. Like that kind of thing where an image will sum up everything you need to know about a character is absolutely what I'm looking for all the time. But I mean, they made that Moneyball and Foxcatcher were big films. I mean, Foxcatcher was both Mark Ruffalo and Steve Carell were Oscar nominated for it. I think it was nominated for the script as well. So like people did see them, and Capote, Philip Seymour Hoffman, I'm pretty sure won the Oscar for Best Actor. That subtle stuff, and it's the kind of the same with Taylor Sheridan as well, who does Yellowstone and Hell or High Water and all that sort of thing. It's kind of like the environment is set up so nicely that you don't even have to worry about it, and all you need to focus on is the characters, and that's everything that I love about filmmaking. And that's kind of it's a shame that he's only done three sort of proper films, because I think I'd just love to watch endless Bennett Miller films. So there you go.
That's good. I will have to watch one of them because I haven't
You
seen
will,
any. I feel like
you really will.
I can't add anything to what you're saying because
It's
I
so
haven't
easy for
seen
Moneyball
them.
to be
But
this kind of like classic sports film where like, oh, they're gonna win the title and all this other stuff, and it's really difficult. But
mm,
actually, there's so many bits and clicks that work in it, which for me separate it out completely. And I think he knows how to pick a script as well. Like he really knows how to pick who's going to write for him and how they're going to do it. So, and that's a big part of directing is understand. Because like one of the reasons why The Favourite is so good is because Tony McNamara writes so well. I think The Favourite should have won the screenplay Oscar for the year it comes out, because I think it's such a clever bit of writing, and
I
Yorgos Lanthimos
agree. I
knows how good that
completely
is,
agree.
so that he comes back
Also,
to him for Poor Things, right?
the writer of the favorite originally
Mhm.
is from UEA.
Oh, really?
Went to UEA and did a creative writing course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Ah.
the original writer of the story, the favorite,
Mhm,
like yeah,
mhm.
yeah. Um, but no, I agree. I think sometimes being able to like that aspect of being able to show something in a moment is a skill. So yeah, completely agree. Yeah, fair.
There you go. So tell me, big name, but who your big underrated person?
Big name, and this is number four, yeah?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's Denis Villeneuve. No,
so I would argue really big name, but I don't think people think of this person when it comes to directing because it's not done in the same way. Brad Bird.
how Brad Bird, you're a genius.
Thank you. Because I think that things like Ratatouille, The Incredibles, like some of those classic Pixar, you don't think of direction when it comes to an animation. You think of the animators, you think of the like storyline, or like, no, 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 no. The direction is so fucking important,
Could do an
so
entire
massive.
episode on Brad Bird. Like,
Literally. And also I just wanted him in there because of Edna Mode. But equally, like
Milan, darling, Milan.
but I just think that like I think that people forget about direction when it comes to animation. And I think that I wanted him in there, not because he's an underrated person in the industry, but because he's underrated when people think about directors. Um,
I completely
would
agree.
you like me to talk about why he's a good director?
Would you like to? Would I like you to talk to me about why Brad Bird's a good
Or
director?
is that enough?
I mean, we all know, but I mean, if there's stuff that you want to say, then please say it.
Okay, I think Ratatouille is one of the greatest films ever created.
It's just the
And
correct opinion,
let me tell you for why. Um,
and I'll tell you for why.
and I'll tell you for why. When it's, I mean, we could talk about the storyline and the music. The music is unbelievable. We could talk about the animation, all this kind of stuff. I mean, the culmination of all of those things is ultimately up to the director. So we can consider those things in one of the reasons that we love it. But also, I think it's so in the way that you are following it with a camera almost in Ratatouille. Unlike in some of the other like animations that you watch, it's almost like you have like you watch a scene happen and then it changes like shots in inverted commas and you watch like a scene happen. But you think about like in Ratatouille, you know when he's like making the soup, you like follow this rat round like it's like a 360 turn the way that we watch this happen. Like you follow like there's so many like follow shots of Remy the rat where it's
Yeah,
like in a one shot situation
yeah,
where
it's
you
not
like
even necessarily
follow.
just the kind of following the camera thing, but what I love about Brad Bird is, and it's done The Incredibles as well so many times, is it's as if he's using a camera. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's the kind of what he'll do, and the scene I'm thinking of in Ratatouille is when they're on the roof looking down into through the glass ceiling of the restaurant,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it does crash zooms, and the camera just
Yeah,
moves around. It doesn't cut things. It literally moves to the sous chef and zooms in, and then cuts
yeah,
back again and zooms out, and
exactly.
that's so great.
That's what I mean, like that kind of like follow or that kind of like movement there. And
Hmm.
I think that Ratatouille does it possibly better than any other Pixar film, but
Yeah.
I think it is used in so many of them. And
Hmm.
that's what I think is so clever in that you're right. Like even the beginning of Ratatouille, like that there's so many different things that like you look at. So like the camera, that woman who tries to shoot the rat at the beginning of Ratatouille, you follow the lens of that gun where it's
Mm.
going to go, like it's the lens of a camera. Sorry, you follow the barrel of that
Lens,
gun.
lens.
Fuck off. You
Sorry.
follow the barrel of that gun like it's the lens, like the lens of a camera is on that. Like it's
Yeah.
so inventive
Hmm.
in the way that you see the film. And
Hmm.
obviously that matches with the music and the voicings and everything like that. But I find the way that the characters are followed and so many things are like almost like from the rat's perspective, like the
Hmm.
looking up towards all of the characters, the amount of times in that film that you watch action that looks like it's from filmed from someone's shoe
Yeah.
because that's the perspective of a rat. I just think it's like unbelievable.
Hmm.
Um, so that is, and yeah, basically just like all of the kind of ways that the camera literally follows Remy wherever he goes. Like there's so many points where he like goes into the sewers and then like out of the sewers and then like over the road and then up at the side of a building, and you follow him do that. You don't watch the rat do that. You like follow as he goes there, and
Yeah.
you kind of jump scare at the same things that he jump scares at. I think it's genius, and I love him. And then also he is the voice of Edna Mode, which I think is you just unbelievable.
Brilliant. Just perfect.
Thank you.
Absolutely perfect. I
Thank
I
you.
think he has one misstep in his filmography.
Okay.
It's when he does. So I think he's only done live action twice.
Right.
Once was for Mission Impossible 4, Ghost Protocol, which
I
is
didn't know that.
one of the mid to better Mission Impossibles.
How many are there?
Um,
Like nine?
yeah, I think eight or
I've
nine.
I've
I can't
seen,
remember.
honestly, I've
I
seen
think it's
one of them.
eight. Eight. I'm gonna go with eight, but yeah.
Okay.
So you've only seen one of them, and it was the last one.
I've seen the
You've seen the last
first
one.
one, the first one and the last one.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, watch some of watch five and six. They're good. Um,
Okay.
but he did a film with George Clooney and Hugh Laurie called Tomorrowland. This kind of big sci-fi thing, and it's a bit of a misstep. I can't lie. It doesn't really
Okay,
work.
fair.
But having said that, Incredibles 1, Incredibles 2, Ratatouille, the Jack Jack Attack
Hmm.
short, and of
Hmm.
course The Iron Giant, which is one of the saddest films I've ever seen. Yeah, this guy's pretty. He knows exactly what he's doing, and
Yeah.
he's also, I think, was also involved in the production of both Lifted and The One Man Band,
Yeah.
which are two of the best shorts
Lifted is
ever.
so good. Lifted is
Um,
unbelievable.
Lift is amazing, but yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can say about Brad Bird other than this kind of there's a kinetic. What I like about Brad Bird is that like it's incredibly. It's almost as if it's an adult film animated into a kids film some of the time with Brad
Yeah.
Bird. Because like the main plot line sort of at the start of The Incredibles is like domestic ennui. It's this kind of I'm past it now. I don't know if my wife actually likes me. I'm stuck in this horrible job. I don't want to come home. And then she thinks I'm having an affair. I'm not having an affair, but maybe I am having an affair. Am I having an affair? And suddenly
Hmm.
it's like superheroes and invisible and the man with the ginger fringe is going to kill everybody. And it's like,
Mm.
what the hell? But it's so well done. Like I think The Incredibles is like on a par with James Bond in terms of like
are
genre
top
film and sci-fi.
tier
It's
movie.
absolutely brilliant.
Hmm.
Ratatouille is my favorite animated film of all time. The
It's
Iron Giant has
genuinely, I
made
think,
me
one of the
cry
best
so
films.
many times. The end of the Iron Giant, like, actually make I can't even think about it. Like, it actively makes me so sad. Yeah, he's a genius.
Mhm.
I can't have any complaints with that at all.
So yeah,
And I
because
actually quite like Mission Impossible 4, so
I know that he's like a massive name, but I feel like don't people don't think of him as a
no,
director
but
because of the animation, you know?
exactly. And actually, that's something that I should have done is thought about animation and directors as well, because
Mm.
that's why I should have said Phil Lord and Chris Miller, because I feel like taking control of Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse and whatever the last one's called, coming home from Into Out of the Amazing Spider-Verse.
Mhm.
It's like that's a big thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was a smart choice. Well, that was a
Thank you.
smart choice. Well done.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, let's. You want to just run through the names that you've mentioned, just so that we've got a sort
Well,
of
I've
really
got one more that you won't like.
go on.
So firstly, they were underrated until really recently, where I feel like they've kind of come into fame and now they're not underrated. And also, you've expressed that you don't love this person that much before, but I do. I have put Emerald Fennel on my list.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 40 of the Real Life Podcast. That's it for now. It's all goodbye. We're not doing any more.
And may
Now
I
go
tell
on.
you why? Okay.
So that was a lie then. You know when you said you had three left, two of them are the same one.
No, I said that I had.
You said that you had three people left to talk about, but two of them were in the same category, and then
No,
we
I said
finished.
I said I had three people left to talk about, but in one of those, it's
Oh, I
two people.
see. Right, well, you cheating
Sorry.
bastard.
Yeah, I know.
Why did you
But
come with so many? I thought you weren't gonna have
because you
any.
said come with as many as you want.
Yeah, but like I said, I've got four.
Oh, well, I came with six.
You're upstaging me on my own fucking podcast. I've got
But
four
also,
directors, my exact text to you.
yeah. But also, I didn't know whether some of those you'd be like, no, not obscure enough. Next, does that make sense?
Who do you not obscure enough? I'm not having it. No,
Well, no,
the
but so
most
for
obscure
example, like,
names you've ever heard in your entire life.
but like,
I
but but like Rob Marshall and Stephen Daldry, they're not like
I'm about to
underrated.
turn around to you and tell you to fuck off.
No, but you could have been like, oh, come on, they're not underrated. Like
No,
Aviva
I've
and the
got
others, and I'd be
Lynn
like, yeah,
Ramsey, for goodness sake.
yeah, fair. But okay. So can I explain to you why Emerald Fennel's on my list?
Yeah, all right, we'll have a discussion about it. That's it.
Okay. Number one, I know you don't like this sentence. I think it's really pretty. I think the things that she do are very visually stimulating and very impressive to watch. So
Am
I
I
like
pretty?
them. Am I? I look quite pretty.
I look quite
Um,
pretty.
but I think it's pretty to watch, and I like watching pretty films. So that is one of the considerations. Number two, I'm specifically talking about really promising young
Promising young
women.
woman. No, good.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. More than Saltburn. I don't dislike Saltburn, and I know that that's not a popular opinion with you, but I I liked Promising Young Woman more than I
I
liked
liked
Saltburn.
Promising Young Woman as well.
Good. There are a number of things that I like about Promising Young Women. Number one, the use of colour.
Hmm.
Colour is unbelievably done in Promising Young Woman. There's the kind of mix between like red and blue. These like they're like seeing red physically, like the anger of seeing red. This element of like blood, the use of colour there. Even like on I know this sounds silly, but like on like the nurse's outfit that she wears or whatever, or like the whatever, the silly stuff that's like Red Cross. The use of color and then the train going over at night with the red, I think is really impressive. Partially because it paints a very vivid picture and it's like this person played by Carey Mulligan is like feeling everything really acutely, really vividly.
Hmm.
Um, the second thing is the use, and I know that she's not directly in charge of this, but equally it comes under her jurisdiction, the use of casting. I think I've talked about this before, but I will talk about it again. You have people like Bo Burnham, you have Max, is he called Greenwald? The guy that plays Schmidt.
Yeah.
You have all of these very famous, but very lovable, like comedy men and you put them in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I love this guy. Oh my God, I love this guy. Oh my God, I love these guys. And then you turn everybody against them. Unbelievable choice. Such a massive fan of that. I love again the choice of music. It while she didn't write the music, she obviously has to commission the music. That has to be a consideration within the role of directing. And I think that the music I really like because it's so again, you get on board with it. You're like, oh, I love this song. I love it. But it's so sinister. It's turned on its head because this woman is genuinely crazed. I think that Promising Young Woman is a really brilliant demonstration of lots of different elements of filmmaking coming together to make you feel like shock and confusion and kind of like badass. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the feeling at the end of it, like I enjoyed the feeling that I had at the end of it, even though like in a way, I mean spoilers, she hasn't won because she's dead, but she absolutely in death, she has won. And the power in being a completely crazed woman, I found really impressive.
Hmm.
And I feel like that hasn't been done so well before. Like people look at like I think people try to do like crazy women and then all of a sudden you've got like Anya Taylor-Joy in her underwear with like running mascara and I'm like that's not a crazy woman. That's somebody who's having a Friday night. Like that's not a
Mm.
crazy like whereas you show Promising Young Woman and you're like that's a crazy woman and why am I absolutely here for it and why do I kind of want to be there? Like that's she's haunted but I'm impressed by it. That's
Hmm.
and hey look, I know that you don't like it but there we go.
No, 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 no. Let's not get it twisted here. I really, really like Promising Young Woman. I think
Okay,
it's a
good.
far, far, far superior film to the toneless, classless, aesthetically surface level, confused bollocks of Saltburn.
Hmm.
Well, the reason why I wouldn't include Emerald Fennell in my list of underrated directors, I think she could be brilliant. I think if she directs something that she's written again, she won't be. And I think she will do much, much better stuff with other people's material. If she hadn't have made Saltburn, she'd be a better director than now that she has made Saltburn. I mean, it sounds like a weird thing to say because she'll have learned lots of things, but there's so many directorial choices in Saltburn which are done purely for surface level aesthetic value, which really don't add anything at all. And the propensity to know when to stop is something which I
I know that
really value.
I know that you think that Saltburn was gratuitous. Like I
It's
know that
not
you
just the
think.
fact that I think because a lot of that comes from the writing,
Mm,
and the writing is the writing. It's her script, so she's going to do
mm.
it how she wants. And like I've seen weirder stuff than Saltburn. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that doesn't even scratch the bloody surface. However, my problem was that I thought the content was gratuitous. I thought that it just didn't earn any of its gratuity. I thought that what it was doing was so wrapped up in the thrill of being gratuitous that it forgot to actually get to the bit where we deserved to experience any of that stuff. And my
Okay.
biggest problem with any filmmaker is indulgence. Now, I've spoken about this before. I did a whole episode about this. Um, I think on some level, Robert Eggers is a genius who did The Northman, The Lighthouse, The Nosferatu that came out recently, The Witch. On some level, I think he is brilliant. But there is an indulgence problem which goes, you get to the realistically the 2 hour stage, and he just starts to go absolutely mental.
Mm.
And there comes a point where I'm watching the seventh beheading in The Northman going, I'm actually not interested anymore. Like you could have wrapped this up so long ago. It's like Ari Aster in Midsummer. Like I was enjoying this dysfunctional relationship so much, but you've just enjoyed yourself too much. You started to it becomes self-serving, and I really hate that. And with Saltburn, it's that thing of going, look, Barry Keoghan's character is a mentalist and he's manipulative, clearly, and he'll do whatever he wants. It's the idea of watching him on set going, I'm gonna fuck this grave now, and nobody going, because contextually it makes no sense for the plot.
I know that I know that for you it didn't earn the gratuity that it showed, but for me, I found it really intriguing and it didn't go overboard for me.
It could have.
Like
Here's the thing, like
it could
it's
have
not
gone
the
so much further, but
gratuity. it's not gratuity that I've got a problem with necessarily. It's just the fact that a lot of it doesn't make any. It's not the fact that it's like I think that it's weird. It's the fact that I think that it's stupid. Like I don't. It's the same thing with Babylon. Like I don't
Mm,
necessarily think that um that what I'm seeing is like necessarily too confusing or whatever. I just think
mm,
it's like it's bad. It's just too much. Like I can't. There are some very pretty still images in Saltburn. There are some very pretty moments where it looks like a
hmm.
painting and everything's just set up aesthetically quite nicely. But there are things like the square aspect ratio, which I think adds absolutely nothing whatsoever and is solely a directorial choice. There are things
Okay.
like I know for a fact that she added back in scenes which were originally cut, which I think didn't have any kind of bearing on things at all. There are things like random uses of still camera in shots, which normally in other parts of the film they had a moving camera, which I just don't think had anything at all. Like there are choices made with what we're actually shown and what the camera does, which I just think are done because they think it looks a bit cooler. And I think that's like cool is what I absolutely, and Tarantino does that all the time. Cool is what I really hate. That idea that like going, oh, well, I'll just do this because it's fun. Like in The Hateful Eight,
Mm,
it'll go like, well, I'll just blow these guys up because it's fun. It's going, yeah, but it's not
mm,
interesting, is it, Quentin? Like I'm not
sure.
actually gaining anything from this.
So
I
I
was
was
just
going
gonna
to say,
say
I don't
the
know
problem
about
I
the
don't
aspect ratio.
no, I'm not saying you have to know filmically about all these things, but because I and a lot of people that I know that do have, uh, filmic backgrounds or have taken classes or whatever, like
Mm,
they say the same things and they just go, well, you looked pretty in times, but like there's no reason necessarily for these things. And I think my frustration with Saltburn would never been the gratuity had the plot made some kind of like class or actually kind of logical sense. But when you break it
sure.
down, I just think of it and go, there's so many holes in this that none of this is any long is no longer interesting to me. Yes, I'm being made to be
Mm,
uncomfortable, and I think that you're right that is something to be applauded because it does that very well. But like I've been made to be uncomfortable, and then at the end gone, wow, like I hate like you were never really here. I've been made to feel so uncomfortable, but everything that came packaged with it was like introspective and brilliant. This was just
mm.
like I'm actually posh and I never liked you, but I am going to fuck your grave because I did love you. What? Sorry? I mean, what do you make your mind up? Like
Mm,
what's going
I
on?
Okay, I don't agree with that, but I think that we'll never agree. So
No, it doesn't
there's
look
no
like it,
point
does
in
it?
me. Do you know what I mean? But yeah. But to be fair, I think that I really debated whether to include to include Emerald Fennell or
Well,
not
now I'm debating whether or
because
not to include this lovely argument that we've had. Yeah, I thought we were going to end on a
no.
little moment of unity with Brad Bird, but actually we'll do
Okay,
this.
if you, genuinely, if you want, you can take it out. Like that's fine. But
Why not?
it is how it is how I've like I do think that she's included for me partially.
Okay,
I can so clearly identify some of her directorial decisions that I liked.
sure.
And for me, that's quite difficult in a lot of because when, film works so cohesively, it's really difficult to go, oh, that's performance or that's direction or that's writing or that's screenplay or that's sound or whatever. But she has made some choices that I can see are her choices, and
Hmm.
I go, I like that. That's
Okay.
clever.
All
I
right.
enjoyed it.
Well, that's a good reason to include, apart from anything else. So, very fair. Right, let's list off the people then.
Okay.
So, tell me who you have spoken about.
So I'm said Rob Marshall for the Chicago movie, basically. Lol. And Mary Poppins Returns. I said Stephen Daldry for Billy Elliot, The Reader, The Crown. I said Amy Sherman Palladino for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I said Desiree Arquette for Miseducation of Cameron Post. I said Brad Bird for Ratatouille and animation in general, just icon. And I said Emerald Fennell.
Wonderful. That is a list of more obscure names than I think maybe some people would have been expecting. So that's good. That's a
Rude,
good
but thank you.
list. Well, let's
That's
be
fine.
honest. You did walk into this be like, I don't know how obscure they are, and I was expecting to be like, right,
Well, no, that's
here we
because
go. Number
let's be
one, Greta
honest.
Gerwig. Number two.
No, but
I just was slightly worried you were going to turn up and say, "Have you heard of Darren Aronofsky by any chance?" And I'd be like,
have
"Yeah, yeah, no, I have."
you heard of
Okay. Yeah.
Tarantino?
Yeah. Have you heard of this guy? Yeah, called David Cronenberg. Yeah, no, I have actually. So, okay, so I had Apachapong were ascetical for mainly Symmetry of Splendor. He also actually did a really good film called Uncle Boon Me Who Can Recall His Past, which is brilliant. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch that.
Okay.
Um, uh, Thomas Alfredson for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Let the Right One In because the less said about the snowman, the better. I had Lynn Ramsey for mainly You and Never Really Here. And we need to talk about Kevin, also more than Calla, even though I didn't really talk about it. And then my number one was Bennett Miller, primarily for
Mm.
Foxcatcher and Moneyball. All right. Well, anyway, that's been quite a nerdy chat. I don't know how much of it I'm gonna cut down, but
Yeah,
like,
you might. Yeah, that's fine. Also,
but we'll see.
I wanked on a lot about the same
That's what
things. So
podcasts are for. This is what long form media was invented for, so that people like me and you can wanker on for as long as we bloody well like.
this is
Um,
true.
just as long as you didn't turn around and go, Steven Spielberg, then everything's fine. That's that. Thank you very much. I don't know what the next one's going to be, but I will work
It's
something out.
okay.
And you need to GTFO because I've recorded like 4 podcasts with you in like the space of like 2 weeks, and that's just too much for anyone to handle. So I don't know
Well,
who's
then don't have another podcast
honestly
with me,
the
you
like
prick.
inevitable text of like, "Hey V, are you free next week?" is gonna be
Yeah,
like,
genuinely.
sorry.
Not me like
So.
actually having a job.
Yeah, I know. Not me leaving mine. I
Congrats.
will. Thanks. I'm gonna go and watch Bastille now. And have a lovely
I'm gonna
night.
go and watch Ratatouille now.
Good plan. Yeah, big
Thank you.
fan of that. I was asked the other day what my favorite song from a Disney Pixar film was, and I did say La Festa from Ratatouille because it's just like it's so evocative for me. There's a big nod happening.
That's the biggest nod.
Wish I could speak French. All right, I'll see you later. Thanks, V.
Love you lots. Thanks for having me back. Sorry I wanked on.
It's all right, me too. Bye.
Bye.